Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2023 horror comedy We Have a Ghost. It's on Netflix. That's where I watched it. It's one of those, Netflix only exclusives, if you will. And I'm going to tell you up front, this is a PG-13 film, and it's horror comedy, but it's more drama than it is anything, in my opinion. And this does hit kind of a good sweet spot for people who are, I don't want to say more controlling, but people who are less comfortable with their younger children seeing like really horror driven stuff, but are down to like have like a bit of horror. So it has some horror to it, but it's very light. I mean, it's very PG-13. There are some way more horror driven PG-13 films out there that I can think of that I like more. But this is actually, it's a decent film. The problem is going into it what to expect. Because like I said, horror comedy, not really. It's more drama. There is some comedy to it, but there's very sparse comedy. And the other thing is, how funny is comedy really in a PG-13? At least on my level, the type of comedy I like is more in an R-rated film. I like horror comedies like Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And if you want to go like really over the top, I actually really do like the Scary Movie films. Just the first two, not the entire franchise. So just a little idea of what to expect. This is a no spoiler review since it's a new film, but let me get into it. Written and directed by Christopher Landon, who also did Blood and Chocolate, Disturbia, 5 of the Paranormal Activity films, he wrote those. Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, Viral, and Happy Death Day to You. I've seen the first one, haven't seen the second one. I heard the second one's actually pretty solid. I like the first one. And then he most recently did Freaky, which I did enjoy Freaky. I thought that was good. This is apparently based on a short story by Geoff Manaugh, and it has in it Tig Notaro, Jennifer Coolidge, Anthony Mackie, and David Harbour. Now, of those people, David Harbour and Anthony Mackie have the larger roles of the 4, but David Harbour's role is limited in a certain way. And if you watch the film, you'll see what I mean about limited in a certain way. I don't want to like spoil anything about it. Anthony Mackie, I think, is underutilized in this film because he's very funny. I wanted a lot more Anthony Mackie. I wanted a lot more of his comedic aspect of his acting because one of my favorite Christmas-related movies is The Night Before, and Anthony Mackie is so good in it. He's so funny. He is an amazing actor in general, but he has great range, and I would like people to see more of his comedic chops. I want to see more of his comedic chops. Quick synopsis, it's basically about a family who gets a really good deal on a dilapidated house. Come to find out, just like the title says, oh no, we have a ghost once they move in. There's a ghost there, and it's kind of about how they choose to deal with it, what's going on with the ghost. There's kind of an investigative aspect of the film that I do like that really does help kind of engage you more because it is a longer film. It's almost 2 hours, which I think is way too long, in my opinion, especially for what content is there. I really do think this film needed to be cut down a bit because the pacing's not great. It does drag quite a few times, in my opinion, and what would help with the dragging? Good comedy, but it's sparse on the comedy. So the fact that it's called a horror comedy, it's kind of mischaracterized, in my opinion. This is more like family horror drama with a slight bit of comedy. You take note of how good the music is very early on in this film. They did a great job with the score. They did a great job selecting additional music to throw into the film. Really like that about it. The setup for the story feels very familiar in a lot of ways. It feels like very well tread, kind of tired material, but it does have its own interesting take on things. So it's not just retreading a bunch of stuff you already know. It will feel that way when you start the film, but give it a little bit of time, things start to unfold, and it's its own thing. It does a good job. They do give you an emotional level to the family that the story ends up really focusing on, and this is a drama aspect of it. I was expecting going in that it would be way more on the comedy aspect of it, and for that reason, you're typically not going to have characters who really get fleshed out a whole lot. Not the case here. They really focus on this family dynamic. They focus on all these family characters. And there are some really interesting, rich characters in the film. Not rich this way, but well-developed and interesting. That's the other thing. The acting, for the most part, is outstanding. Yeah, so many good acting jobs done in this one. There wasn't anyone that I saw that I was just like, eh. All really good, so top notch. There is nice style to the camera work. You really do notice the cinematography and the directing. It looks very visually pleasing. There's some very inspired, interesting shots that are framed, and like I said, interesting camera work, like movement-wise. I did enjoy that. Like I said, comedy's light, needed to be balanced a little bit more. But the interesting aspect of where the story goes does kind of help with that aspect of it. Online culture does play a pretty significant role in this film. So if you don't like a lot of references to online culture, stuff like that, you might not really love this film, but it's very much of its time. It's supposed to be set in present day, so what are you going to do? They don't ignore things. They embrace them technology-wise. Again, acting's really good. There is an interesting investigative aspect of the film. I don't want to go too much into depth on that because I don't want to ruin anything, but I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward with what they were going to do with the story, but it does other stuff that you're not necessarily expecting, and like I said, there's kind of an investigative aspect of it. That as soon as that popped up, I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't really see this coming, but I like that. I'm along for the ride for this one. You definitely won't know where this film is headed when you start it, which is obviously a good thing. You don't want to. Like I said, you'll start watching it and be like, oh, I feel like I probably already know where this is going to go. You don't. Some of that's good, some of that's not so good. There is a subplot in this that I was kind of like, I mean, I'm assuming it's integrated a lot better from the short story, but the way it's integrated into this film seems like a time waster. It doesn't seem like it matters that much. I understand why they do it. They kind of do it to accomplish something, but you could do it a lot of other ways and waste a lot less time, in my opinion. Really, the subplot ends up just unnecessarily drawing out the film, which makes it drag a good amount of the time. And it just doesn't feel like it fits with what's going on. It's a very odd choice. And they could have remedied that by having it be harder on the comedy, because typically when it's harder on the comedy, you kind of believe more, you're more forgiving with what's going on, because things are just, you know, it's funny, it's supposed to be funny, it's supposed to be ridiculous, but they don't do that. Pacing isn't great, like I said, big time pacing issues. There is a subplot, literally just said that. There's a point where it feels like the film is going to end, but it keeps going. Another issue with the pacing. When you're watching a film and you're like, oh yes, this feels like this is where it's going to end, usually that's because it's a good place for it to end. And then if they tack something on after that that doesn't end up adding a whole lot, honestly, not great. It just feels like it's lengthening the film for no real reason, and this film does that, unfortunately. Like I said, really needs to be cut down. The ending is okay. I was okay with the ending. Not what feels like the natural ending was good, and then the portion after that I was kind of like, why are we? I don't need this. Nice work with lighting in darker scenes. This is something I really like to call out because a lot of filmmakers have a problem with it nowadays, where there will be scenes in the dark and you can't see what's going on. That's an issue with lighting. They did a great job in this, making sure that when there are dark scenes, you can see exactly what you need to see. It's very well lit. This is proof that you can do this, people. You can do this. I did want a lot more comedic moments from Anthony Mackie. That bears repeating. He's very good in this. When you see him, especially the comedic aspects that he throws at the screen, you're into it, or at least I was into it, and I wanted more. And in the end, there's a lot said about parent-child relationships because they focus so much on the family, like I was saying early on. And it is mainly from a child's perspective, because there is one kid in the family that they mainly focus on things from his perspective of what's going on, and you'll see why that is. And he is a very interesting character, and like I said, all the acting's really good, so the characters are interesting. They really do come to life. So overall, I did like it. I don't think this is a phenomenal film. Like I said, I think this is very good as like a family sit down and watch for people who want something much lighter for their kids. Or just enjoy that type of horror-ish film. So out of 5 stars with half stars to play, I'm going to give it a solid enough 3-star rating. I thought it was decent enough. 3 stars on that. So would love to hear other people's opinions on this. With spoilers, go ahead. You can talk spoilers in the comments. Go ahead and put it down there. Let me know, hate it, love it, in between, and give me like a sentence or two. Don't just say I like it or I don't like it, because that doesn't really mean anything to me, honestly. You gotta tell me why. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. Also hit the notification bell button, because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 or 4 a week at this point, which I think is a good amount. But regardless, really do thank you for taking your time to watch this video, and until next time, keep it brutal.